So let's just jump into it. First point, it may not be obvious to you, but you should not think of philanthropy as negative assets. So for bankers who think about purely assets and accumulating assets from clients, philanthropy can be viewed as a negative thing. Whatever is given away is not left for investments. I just put it out to you all that if you think, you can think about it that way, but if you think about philanthropy as just an outflow of cash or negative assets, you probably will find yourself more and more disconnected with some of the clients who are thinking more longer term. It's easy to say that the best wealth managers in the world focus on advice, not on products. But I think what's more important for you all, for all of us as advisors to clients, is that if we're not paying attention to what our clients see as important for themselves, we become less and less relevant to them. So one thing to take away, please, you can think of philanthropy as negative assets and therefore bad for you or for your books. But actually, if you can engage with your clients, if we can engage with our clients on the basis of what are their long-term needs, we become and maintain a continuing relevance to these clients and become true advisors to them. That's a summation. Now, so across Asia, why is philanthropy important? Now, obviously, religious considerations. In Malaysia, there is obviously compulsory giving, zakah. There is a consideration that people are giving back to society. So I have not named a single Malaysian family or single Malaysian foundation in this presentation. But I would ask all of you, as you think about what I'm saying, just think about the number of foundations of well-known companies, well-known family-owned businesses, however big, however small, that appear in your newspapers almost every week, that appear even in the Forbes magazines. These families and these owners are thinking about somehow some kind of philanthropy. For the business families, for your clients who are business families, for them, philanthropy has got three dimensions, right? One is about the family. Now, Millie made a comment in the earlier session that many of the families have got next generation members scattered all over the world, in many different locations, in many different geographies. And some families start to see philanthropy as a way of bringing back and keeping the family united and cohesive. Business alone will not do that, because not every member of the family is involved in business. I have to apologize to that part of the room because I'm tied to my laptop here, so I can't walk over there. I think for the business families who have corporates, the company's social responsibility is also increasingly important. You know that more and more the rating agencies start to look at how responsible, socially responsible a company is in the way that they assess these companies. Think about, you're familiar with the abbreviation ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance criteria for looking at companies. Yeah, these are signs that fund managers are paying attention to how companies are behaving in the environment in which they operate. And obviously stakeholders, right? A lot of our clients have got stakeholders besides their family who may be shareholders of a public listed company, or even for a private company, long-term employees, and how do you keep people loyal to you over a long term? To them, wages alone is insufficient to keep people, right? They'll just run away to the next person who pays the highest wage. So a lot of them are using the company, the identity and the culture of the companies to retain and attract people. And philanthropy is a way of doing that. Just a small comment on, I may have messed this up. Yeah, just a small comment on philanthropy. Try to think about it as some kind of a pyramid, right? Now, I'll go through these 3 points through the rest of this presentation. the pyramid starts at the bottom, and it's a concept of helping. So philanthropy to the people who are, to many of us who are just starting out, might be just the concept of helping out, right? There's a disaster, you help out. I'll talk about each of these in greater detail. And then further up, once they've satisfied that, it goes up to the question of what is my legacy? What am I giving back? How do I, the client, how do your clients want to be remembered? And the last part, the highest form of philanthropy, which we will talk about some examples, is actually effecting social change. So let's just dive into it. Now, at the base of helping, at the base of that pyramid, there's helping. Just a quick note on zakah in Malaysia, because zakah is compulsory giving in Islamic culture, as you all know. You know that in Malaysia, your giving has increased about 27 times over the last 20 years. So a significant giving through the compulsory mechanism in Islam goes to part of your society here. Apart from compulsory giving, there's voluntary giving. Now, the bubble diagram is way too small even for me standing here. But it's a bubble chart that is produced by the Charities Aid organization, and it ranks different countries in the world by how charitable they are. Charity in this case is defined to be either voluntary giving, the first bullet point, either volunteering your money, giving away your money, volunteering your time, or simply helping people out. Malaysia, which is the bubble here, has been doing very well, just so you know. In 2013, Malaysia was ranked about 55 in the world. The measurement took over 120 countries. 1 year later, Malaysia is number 7. So Malaysia is doing very well. Okay, and this is not zakah, this is voluntary. But there's a lot of work to be done. We meet with, in this country, we meet with many organizations who point out to a lot of needs everywhere. Just this morning, we met with an organization who talked about conservation of certain parts of the environment in Malaysia, which are at the risk of being destroyed. Education, which is the example I've given you here, Malaysia still ranks lower than most of the Asian neighbors in terms of literacy. So even though a lot of the money that is being given away, and incidentally, education is probably one of the main causes that attracts philanthropic money in Malaysia and in many parts of Asia, despite the amount of money that goes to education, Malaysia is still behind the rest of a lot of Asia in terms of what are the official rankings of literacy. So work remains, right? The need, in other words, not to focus on the specific example, but in other words, the social needs in any country, Malaysia being one of them, far exceed whatever amount of money you can actually throw at it. So that's helping, the base of the pyramid. And the problem there is, the net problem there is the needs are often much greater than what anybody is prepared to give away in aggregate. So our clients, when they're thinking about philanthropy, the question that we may want to discuss with them is, how big is the problem that we're trying to address, and how much can you actually devote to it? Now, second point on legacy. I've given you a quote by Churchill. What is legacy to our clients? In simple terms, to the owner of a business, however successful, however large that business is how do I want history to remember me or my family? We all may think that's not a terribly important question, but I can guarantee you many of the families that are in Asia today, the ones that are listed in the magazines, where if you look at the average age of the patriarchs of these companies, they're in their 70s or 80s in some cases, this is an important issue. It isn't just the business. Why? Because the business itself may not last that long. right? Think about Malaysia as an example. Think about, and without names, think about the families who used to own plantations in Malaysia. They were the great plantation families. My grandfather was in East Malaysia, he had a pineapple plantation. The great plantation families. Today, there are very few of them. They've converted into property ownership or development. The nature of the business changes. So the legacy of the business, to many of our clients who are business owners, they worry that it will not be the same. They will never be remembered as the plantation family, right? This is not a regional phenomenon. If you think about the Rockefellers, if you think about all the great families in the world, they have re-engineered themselves so that history remembers them beyond their initial business. Hands up, who can remember what was the main business of Rockefeller? Rockefeller is one of the largest oil. Okay. How many of you knew that? Okay, very few. My point exactly. Nobody remembers what the name is associated with. Very few people remember. And for the ones who are old enough in this room to remember what the Rockefellers are about, 25 years from now, nobody will remember. Legacy matters. I'm going to play you a video, if I can manage it. The video is actually a video interview in January of this year of Bill Gates. And he was interviewed by Charlie Rose, it's a US program. And in it, I want you to listen to what Bill Gates was actually saying. The context of this interview was he was asked by Charlie Rose, how did the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation come about? And why did it start to do what it did? Bill Gates went to South Africa probably about 15 years ago, and he initially wanted to spread the Microsoft religion, right? He wanted to make sure that every child in Africa had a laptop. This interview tells you what happened when he went there. Now, I'm going to try to do this. I'm not the most technologically sound person. Hang on.
You talk about going to Africa in 1997 in order to talk about the digital divide and to see, if you can minimize the digital divide, right?
Right.
And what happened in Soweto?
Well, the idea that a computer was relevant to the problems they were dealing with, where getting enough food, having decent health, having even any electricity, a reasonable place to live. It's pretty clear to me that, hey, I love this computer and I thought it was neat and kids should have access. But they had to rig up a special generator just so I could do this one demo, and they borrowed that generator. It wasn't going to be there once I left. And so the idea that there was a hierarchy of needs, and that in our next focus together, that we'd get at those very basic issues, while in addition still believing in digital empowerment, but not as the top of the list. That was pretty eye-opening for me. They were super polite about the whole thing, but I kind of got that. Oh, this you're doing this.
There's something else out there. I need to drill down.
And I had to, so much to learn, but that was.
In fact, you left saying I got to find out about poverty.
Exactly.
I mean, this was the first sort of searing impact of poverty on you.
That's right, and it was a touring through Africa, simply as a vacation, that we got to see, people really dealing with the basics. And
all right, I'm going to pause here in the interest of time. But listen to what he was saying, right? He began going there, wanting to spread the Microsoft religion. He wanted every child in Africa to be operating on Microsoft. He went there and talked about how, hang on, I'm distracted. How he somebody set up a generator. You can imagine that happening in Malaysia and Indonesia, right? Some rural part, somebody sets up a generator, and then he realizes that actually there are needs far beyond what he can supply through Microsoft. And that was the beginning of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So the Gates Foundation has carefully managed to re-engineer itself so that I think Bill Gates and Melinda Gates will not be remembered just for Microsoft. Legacy. What do our clients want to be remembered for? You're going up now. So we've covered I've touched on the base of that pyramid, which is about helping. I've touched on legacy, which is how our clients want to be remembered by, for. And now social change. Now social change is seriously ambitious stuff. And if before you say, well, this doesn't apply to Malaysia or to Asia, I would ask you to think about some of the larger foundations today that are engaging with government on addressing some of the social issues in this part of the world. These are organizations, these are foundations, these are families, these are clients who are trying to make a change. One example of this is obviously Rockefellers. No point reading all these things and you can't see the picture anyway. I think there'll be handouts. The Rockefeller family across 3 generations. So in 1863, J.D. Rockefeller made his first donation to China. And over the next 2 generations, his son and his grandson continued giving into China. So this is almost 100 years worth of giving into China. Now, obviously, this is an extract, by the way, from the Asia Society, which is today sitting in Hong Kong, and it is one of the foremost think tanks in the Western world on matters relating to Asia. It's the Rockefellers' legacy. They gave about $1 billion to China over a long period of time, and it's resulted in what is probably the best Western awareness of China today. But that's accumulated over a long period of time. And they've given themselves the ability to influence China through science, through art, through religion, right? Now, that is a superb example of long-term legacy, long-term giving, social change. It affects relationships between countries that are not affected by changes of government or changes of ministers or whoever is in power. Obviously, this is not where Asia is today. But think for a moment, we are where this was probably 50, 70 years ago. Our business families, our clients are just beginning to become sufficiently wealthy to be able to think about longer-term issues that their children will follow on. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So I've touched on 3 main areas why our clients think about philanthropy. I'm going to touch for the rest of the time that I have with you on an important aspect of giving. And it's summarized here. So Bill Gates' best friend, Warren Buffett, gave him a sizable amount of money to manage through his foundation, right? Warren Buffett's donation to Bill Gates' foundation, one of the most famous donations in recent times. And the reason, when Buffett made that donation, his reasoning was, and the quote here is roughly what he said, making money is much easier than giving it away effectively. And by giving money effectively, what are we looking for? Now, there isn't enough time to touch on all of these details, but I've tried to use the word RISE to sort of, if you remember anything as the blood moves towards your stomach, remember RISE, right? Relevance. So in other words, when we talk to our clients about their giving, let's help them be clear. Let's help them be clear why you're giving. What is the relevance of why you're giving? Yes, your friends can ask you to donate to this, or to donate to that, or to donate to this and that. And you can take turns donating to each other's causes. That's fine. But if you really want to be giving effectively, you need to be very clear about what you're giving, or else you're throwing your money away. And this is what Buffett didn't want to do. Impact, in other words, what is important to our clients when they give money away? Is it just sheer numbers, quantity? Do I want to affect 10,000 people? Or is it quality? Do I want to make a difference in a particular neighborhood, in a particular town? Neither right nor wrong. Just be clear about it. Otherwise, you end up without purpose. I've put excellence in management operations is a big topic in itself, and I don't propose to go to it, but I've highlighted in bold sustainability. Think about this for a moment. Sustainability is important because money is hard-earned. And the three areas, the three forms I've talked about earlier: donations, creating a legacy, and social change. Which of them are the most sustainable forms of giving? What will last long after it is given? The higher you go up that pyramid, right? So the question is, how do we help our clients ensure that the money that they dedicate to charity, to philanthropy, however it is given, have the best chance of lasting the longest time in terms of its impact, so that they don't have to keep giving all the time, right? For those who don't want it to be negative NNA, so that they don't have to have negative NNA all the time. So sustainability is the theme. I'm going to ask you one question. So if Bill Gates gave away, the Bill Gates Foundation is roughly 40 billion. If he gave that money away through the bottom of that pyramid, just to help out poor people, how long would that money last? Anybody? How long? 10 days. He saw it. It's 10 days. It will last 10 days, right? Given an estimate of the number of poor people in this part of the world living on less than $2 a day, that $40 billion will last them 10 days. So it's going to run out. This form of philanthropy is not sustainable. So what is then? What is sustainable? Now, a long time ago, I worked for a philanthropist, and we wrestled with this question about what is sustainable because of this 10-day problem. And one conclusion we reached was that actually very few things last beyond the initial amount of money that's given, other than a business. In other words, if you invest in a business and the business is successful, it has a chance of lasting longer than your investment amount, right? And over time, that's given rise to an area which is defined, which is called impact investing. Now, I'm going to play you a video. I think we still have time for that. I'm going to play you a short video, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about this area, and then stop and allow for Q&A for the rest of the session. All right? So the area of impact investing tries to address the question of how sustainable can philanthropy be. All right, my second attempt at being clever. Hang on.
Can you imagine investing in something that combines financial return with positive social change? Can you make money and change lives for the better? Current trends in Asia are rapidly growing middle class, urbanization, environmentally unfriendly business models, limited resources. It's simple. The world has to change the way it does business. Impact investing puts money into businesses that have a positive social and environmental impact in the communities they operate in, such as access to clean water, affordable housing, improved agriculture, education, affordable health care, renewable energy, access to financial services. It's about achieving the maximum impact for each $1 allocated. The more the business grows, the greater the positive impact. A lot of great ideas are already out there. Entrepreneurs just need the money to turn these into reality. Now, while philanthropy works best for instant relief of disaster and disease, investing in businesses that provide long-term solutions for basic requirements and services is also needed. Investing in businesses that are economically viable, fast-growing, and have a positive social or environmental impact is the next mainstream asset class. Impact investing. Together, we can make a difference.
This video was produced about 3 years ago. So the firm that I work for holds a forum, a philanthropy forum every year. And about 3 years ago, we produced this video to expose our clients to this idea. The term impact investing has been around since 2008. It was actually created by the Rockefeller Foundation. And since then, if you Google it today, you get about, the last I looked, about 90 million hits on the word. So it's becoming quite a popular word. What I'm trying to do today isn't to teach you everything about impact investing. It's not my role, nor is it possible. What I'm trying to do today actually is give you a sense of what it is. Now, hang on. What impact investing is, or tries to be, it's to sit in the middle, right? For those of you who are looking at it, this diagram has got 3 blocks to it. On the left-hand block, it's philanthropy. It's pure giving. It is what is the impact that we're making in our giving, right? Financial outcomes are usually not important at all. At the other end of the spectrum, the furthest right-hand part of the spectrum, for our clients, they have an option. They can also invest, by proper investments into socially responsible enterprises. So remember what I talked about earlier, ESG screens? Yeah, Standard & Poor's, MSCI, they all have ESG screens. There have been ETFs that have been created for ESG-rated companies. So our clients can invest and do good by investing in those sorts of investments. They can give their money away. They can invest in ESG, let's call it ESG screen companies. And then there's the middle. And it's the middle that I'm describing today as impact investing. What impact investing tries to do is that it tries to invest, it isn't a social enterprise. I don't know whether this term is used in Malaysia, right? It is not a social enterprise. What I mean by that is, this is not investing in a series of coffee shops that employ ex-prisoners or socially disadvantaged people. This is not what it is. That's important. I'm not saying that's not important, but this is not what impact investing is about. Impact investing is investing in a company whose fundamental business model does good. So that the stronger the business, the more profitable, the more sustainable it is, the stronger the business becomes and the more good it does. I'll give you one example, and then I will pause and open up for questions, all right? So just to give you an example, next week, we're about to go and visit with a company in Thailand. And this company was started by an entrepreneur whose family sells rice. Right? Rice is a very important crop in this part of the world. Rice, as you know, in Thailand, is subject to a lot of protectionism. And I don't know whether you recall, a few years ago, there was actually riots in Thailand when the government at that time tried to take away the rice subsidies. So this gentleman saw a need. He realized that there was a market, and remember, the language I'm using is very careful. He realized that there was a market need for a particular type of rice. What is this rice? It was basmati rice, so it's very high value, right? Organic, ticks all the boxes that consumers want. And he produces this rice by convincing initially hundreds of farmers in northern Thailand. Each farmer in northern Thailand is actually a poor farmer. A farmer is never like hungry because they have their own land to produce food. But it's a poor farmer because the farmer has maybe 1 hectare of land. on a hillside. It's not flat land that they can actually produce for commercial agriculture. It's on a hillside. It doesn't quite fit commercial agriculture. And this gentleman worked with farmers who had this sort of land holdings, 1 hectare, to carefully teach them how to grow basmati rice, which requires a lot of attention to detail to cultivate. Perfect for a small farmer to look after 1 hectare of land. He provided seed, he provided expertise, he provided a way of aggregating all the supply, provided the branding of the product, and provided the market to sell it in the US and in Asia. So he has created a brand of organic basmati rice that finds itself on the shelves of New York in Whole Food markets. Along the way, his supply comes from the hundreds and now thousands, and what he hopes to be tens of thousands of small farmers who collectively supply to him. So think about this. The business model, what I talked about earlier, the business model is that he does good. He does good because he helps a smallholder farmer earn a wage that is greater than what that farmer could have produced by himself or herself on the land. The business model becomes stronger as more and more farmers supply to him because his supply becomes more and more assured, his market share improves, his share on the supermarket shelves improves because there's reliability of supply. The stronger that business becomes, the more he is able to do the good that he does. This, ladies and gentlemen in this room, this is what I mean by an example of impact investing. And it is today what is the most talked about field in the area of philanthropy. It is also, by the way, one of the most challenging areas to execute in, but it is something that a lot of our clients, and perhaps your clients, may find interesting because it will touch on certain things that they understand. It will touch on the concerns of sustainability. How long will this last? And they're all business people. They understand business, right? So it might be interesting for us to talk about it in some cases with them. All right, I'll stop here so that we've got enough time for any Q&A if you wish. And hopefully you can get back on track. There, I kept everybody awake. Any questions? Yes, over there.
Bernard, thank you very much. Irina Franken, Asia Philanthropy Partners, company in Singapore. We're talking about sustainability, but I really found that in Asia, we still have to educate donors. Means we actually have to educate our clients. We have to engage them to work together. To be honest, when I have my potential clients from very good private banks, they are not ready yet to think about mega project like we've seen in the video. But that's what they see every day about philanthropy. I think the main thing also in impact investing, and your example is just great, think about small projects. Can you just comment maybe that, how it's important to teach our clients on a small projects?
Yeah.
Don't go to the mega projects. Learn from the small one. The leadership has to be there. The management has to be there. Strategic planning has to be there. Can you just give us some kind of examples maybe from your clients, what is quite important for this particular issue?
I think it's a very, very good comment. I think the idea of starting small and making mistakes, learning while the amounts of money are still small or the scale of the operations is small, it's a very valid point. So we have, I was just chatting at lunch with an individual. So we have any number of examples of clients who have, let's say, companies who have to think about CSR programs. Now, almost today, if you're a company and you don't have a CSR program, you look kind of weird in the world, right? So kind of everybody needs to have it. But this particular company or this particular owner said, okay, I don't want my CSR program to be just about, you know, employees wearing a t-shirt once a year and going to feed some poor old age home or something. I don't just want that. And so we worked with them to say, okay, if you don't want that, then what is it that makes sense to you and to your business and to your employees and to your stakeholders? And this company was in the, it sells consumer products for women. And what we did was that we said to them, okay, you've got operations in 10 countries throughout Asia. So you're an SME, you're a small company, not massive, but you have small fledgling marketing operations throughout Asia. Let's start with one country. Not 10, don't roll it out, in other words, just test with one. And we worked with that particular country manager to define a CSR program in which the company donated school fees, training, vocational fees to train a bunch of women who were ex-offenders. So these were women who came out of prison, who needed work, who really needed to supply their whatever people who depended on them, and whom society really wouldn't give another chance. So they created a vocational program to teach this small group. These were initially, the first program was 10 people, selected out of a group of 100. So of the 10, this company provided the vocational support to teach these 10 women a skill relevant to the usage of the products of this company. Out of the 10 that went through this vocational program, only 4 of them survived. 6 of them either went back to crime, therefore went back to prison, or just gave up. When we sat down with the client and spoke to him at the end of the first year of the pilot and said, you know, we need to have a discussion about success and scale. You've just really funded 4 people. He said to us, you know, we knew this was going to be difficult. The 4 that we've managed to succeed out of the initial pool of 10, that's good enough for me. Because I would have been happy with just 2. The second year that we did this pilot, so we started very small. The second year that we ran the pilot program for the same country manager, so that we didn't try to replicate across, we adjusted some of the parameters in which we worked with the organizations, with the NGOs that we were collaborating with. And it resulted in a much better ratio, if you like, of people who made it through. Now we're into our 4th year. The business is the CSR program in that first country is running along very nicely, and they are now expanding into 2 other countries. So the point to our clients is, and they're all business people who are very hard with their money. They hold it very tightly. The point is, try something small first. If you run and try to do a big scheme, it will not succeed and you will not learn anything about it. Many of our clients wish to give the money away in some form. That innate, remember the bottom of the pyramid, the helping part of it, that's a real part. The real question is really, can they use those funds in a way that makes sense over the longer term? Long-winded answer, but I hope that helps. Yeah? Okay.
Any more questions from the floor?
Hi, Bernard. It's Farah from Labuan IBFC. I just wanted to try and understand from you, what is the cost of giving? So, you know, everyone's interested in giving. I mean, even for me, I don't have a lot of money, but I would like to give. Everyone wants to give. That's an innate need. But very few can actually afford to give, you know, in the sense, the cost of giving. So these people coming to you are, as you say, hard businessmen, you know, and there is an innate need to give. But what is the tipping point, you know? How do you balance that as an advisor? What are your personal thoughts on that?
Ooh. Cost is all relative. So let me tell you what we have done in our little shop. Okay, So we realized that many clients, we're not talking about mega rich clients. We're talking about people who are prepared to give meaningfully, right? But we realized that many people who wish to give meaningfully, who want to give systematically over time, don't really want to incur the costs of doing that. Now, let me just make a distinction. You can, in Singapore, give through giving portals, and I'm sure you've got that in Malaysia as well, right? You can, through PayPal or Visa card or whatever it is, donate your $100, and that $100 will go to wherever it is. There, the cost is not visible to the donor, and for a lot of giving, that's fine. But for the clients that are saying, well, maybe not through the gift portal, maybe not through Kiva, maybe not through whatever it is, let's try to be a bit more systematic. Many of them don't want to incur the cost of staffing up to do that, right? If you're giving away, let's call it, I don't know, let's call it 500,000 ringgit per year or whatever the number is, and you want to be systematic about it, you actually probably need to have somebody keep track of your giving for you. If you're lucky enough to convince your CFO in your company to do that for you and it's part-time, then you're lucky. But most of our clients don't do that. So we realized that our clients don't really want to incur the cost. So what our firm has done is that in Asia, we have undertaken that we will do the administration for our clients. So we will keep track, we will monitor, we'll conduct due diligence as much as we can, up to a certain amount that's relevant, up to a certain degree that's relevant. And we do that because we've got two things. One, we probably have enough staff to do it. And two, we do it as part of our own CSR. So by taking on that cost and internalizing it within our own organization, we've effectively enabled the clients to start their own foundations in a small way. We're not talking about huge foundations. There's some big ones, but in a small way, without having to incur the costs of doing that. Now, cost is all relative. Take in Malaysia, if you're going to hire a competent junior person to just keep track of your giving, you all know better than I do how much that's going to cost, right? If you take that number and you divide that by however much you or your client wishes to give away, whatever that percentage is going to be unreasonable for them. So we've realized that problem, and we said, okay, never mind. Let's, as an organization, as a wealth manager, hopefully we are sensible enough, but hopefully we've got the infrastructure to take that on and enable our clients to do that. And that's come along quite nicely over the years. I know I've dodged the question of cost per se because it's all relative, but if you do the math, I've given you the methodology of the math, and in most cases, the clients will reject the mathematics that come out, right? They'll reject the numbers that come out.
Last question.
Okay. Do my best.
Not everyone, in my experience, wants to create a legacy. Some people want to give for the sake of giving, and I'm not talking about money laundering or what, but they actually want to give on an anonymous basis.
Yes.
They want to give because they want to give. They want to give because they don't want to be recognized as being generous. I mean, that's between them and their maker, so to speak. So are there avenues for people who want to make such, I would simply say, donations? It can be regular, it can be from time to time, it can be when they do very well, and we are not talking about consistent givers, but people who want to give. So do you have, or maybe they would join in some of your more established programs where if they know about it and they come across a situation where they have these funds, they can say to you, hey Bernard, I want to join, I'll give you this for something that is established, that's well run, and of course to them the cost of doing so is just a simple transfer.
The short answer is yes, right? So I think.
So how do we find out about this?
Sidebar conversation. No, jokes aside, guys. So I mean, you're absolutely right. I think our Asian tendency to be understated and to be discreet is something that I think runs through everybody here, right? So for many of these clients, they're perfectly viable routes, even through giving portals, to accomplish giving anonymously. So that's one. I mean, the internet has made it a lot easier to do that sort of giving. In Singapore, we've got the charities portal. I'm sure there's an equivalent here in Malaysia as well. And you've even got you've even got foundations that have set up such portals here in Malaysia, right? So there's a lot of that can go on. And a lot of that is still, and many of our clients, even in any part of the world, will give locally. They give to the country where they are. They don't give across borders. Now, having said that, remember what I told you, we enable our clients to set up their own foundations. And some of these foundations give away money anonymously. The name doesn't appear anywhere. So if you all have institutions that you're capable of influencing in that way, then set up such mechanisms for your clients to actually give money away anonymously. We have seen the last part of what you said. We have seen some examples of where people feel more comfortable donating through another foundation, which is your last example, which is the Bill Gates, Warren Buffett example, right? On a much smaller scale. So those things do happen, but we find that they tend to be less prevalent than just writing a check directly without any name attached to it. Why? Because the receiving foundation usually doesn't want the hassle of accounting for somebody else's money. Right? These are their own personal foundations. Very few foundations will want to mingle assets, if you like, with others. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one more.
Can I ask, just out of interest, Ferdinand, you alluded earlier to cultural sensitivities, and I'm just curious to gain your insight into what you think the appetite for philanthropy is in Asia. How do we get to a point where we have the Melinda and Bill Gates type foundations in this region? At what point does giving become a business, a proper sort of self-sustained business in itself?
That's a tough one. Well, let's look at a couple of data points, right? So the Gates Foundation has tried in many parts of Asia to sign up very wealthy people to the Giving Pledge. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. So the Giving Pledge was started by Bill Gates, and it basically requires the person who wishes to pledge that in their lifetime they'll give away 50%, 90%, 100% of their wealth. Bill Gates has passed through Asia and even Malaysia, as I understand, trying to get people to sign up to this without very much success. Right? He went to India, I'm told, and he only got one. So that's one data point. It's not to say that people don't want to give. I think it's to simply say that people don't want to pledge and don't want to be so visible. The other data point, I think, is that the cultural sensitivities vary within Asia as well. So just to take an extreme example, if you look at China, a lot of the wealth that has come out of China that we see actually is interested in philanthropy, is interested in setting up these mega foundations. I think if you Google Credit Suisse and certain internet-based companies in China, you will see that we've helped set up some fairly large foundations for internet entrepreneurs. So for the Chinese that are creating their wealth quickly and in a very aggressive way, philanthropy for them is a way to create a legacy beyond their internet business. It is a way of, because nobody knows how long that business will last, right? And it is a way to creating these foundations, and they are large. I mean, they're not double-digit billions, but these are fairly respectable sizes, and it's a start. So I'm optimistic overall that while the Asian culture is still quiet and understated, that there is a desire to push out more and more pools of giving over time. But we are still at a very early stage, right? This is something that is, I mean, we are probably 50 years, 2 generations behind where the rest of the world is in this area. But it's a start, and I think, given in Malaysia where you all sit, given the number of corporates that are out there every day in newspapers, in lists and all that, is something that as wealth managers we shouldn't ignore. Yeah? Is there time? I don't know, depends. It's not my control.
Yeah, it works, yeah. Just one more question. The previous question about regular giving, but on a basis not to be known. I really would like you to comment how is important actually to understand that when people give money, they don't finish somewhere in a fund or in foundation. That money has to go to the grounds, have to reach the grassroots organization. It means that even your example with the rice is quite important for the client to understand. I have to be there. I have to know what actually going there. Can you just give the point of how the grassroots and NGOs on the grounds are important in giving effect?
Yeah. So in the US and in the UK, there are organizations, organizations like GuideStar. GuideStar is an organization that started in the US and now has a UK presence that basically keeps track of various NGOs who receive money and how they spend them in terms of their costs, in terms of their overheads, etc. We don't have such things in Asia. At least I know a few people who are trying it, particularly in Thailand. But there's no systematic way of, how should I say it? There's no systematic way by which an NGO can actually be held accountable for its costs or its giving. So as a result of that, we see a lot of our clients who are giving, whether it's large amounts or relatively small amounts. A lot of the work that we undertake in terms of due diligence, I mentioned to you, due diligence and monitoring, a lot of the work that we do has to do with keeping track of where these monies are going. Now, so a true point, in other words. But let me balance that one other point, and hopefully my final statement. Many of our clients, when they think about giving, they forget that there are still costs of the organization to run that giving. So it's almost a paradox, right? I've said to you, on the one hand, charitable organizations in Asia, many of them have no systematic way of reporting how $1 or $100 is spent, whether it's $100 goes directly to the underlying cause or $90 goes and $10 gets spent in overheads, because you need people. The dilemma is, on the other hand, many of the clients that we give on behalf of ignore the fact that there need to be organizations that administer such things. So they forget about overheads, they forget about core costs. In so doing, so in other words, I donate my $1,000 or my $10,000 to a project, and I forget the fact that the project needs to be run by real people who need to earn a living, otherwise they'll be they can't survive. So because there's no accountability on one hand, and donors themselves always forget this point of core costs on the other hand, I think that creates a reinforcing bad situation, right? The receiving organization keeps having to figure out clever ways in which core costs get supported without having to position to the donors that your money is all going there. It's not a good situation to be reinforcing. So, for wealth managers, all of you in this room, for wealth managers who are talking to your clients, who are thinking about projects, I would encourage us all to simply say to them, okay, we're going to give X dollars to this project or to this NGO for whatever. Let's have the discussion with the receiving organization to be very clear about how much of that X dollars actually gets eaten up by costs, which we recognize as necessary. The more we can have these sorts of discussions as donors, as clients, as professionals on behalf of our clients, I think the better the outcome is for everybody. Yeah.